Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Living Well After 65 show, blowing through the stop signs of old age. Dr. Peter Salerno is with me. He is the author of a book by that name. You can find it on Amazon. Download the paperback or buy the paperback and download the Kindle version. Every couple weeks, we extrapolate from the book and talk about some of the issues in it. The name of the book, again, Living Well After 65, blowing through the stop signs of old age. So Dr. Peter Salerno Jr., he and I have been together as co-workers to the extent to which I'm the object of your work.
Right.
So I've been with him for a long time, as you've heard before in some of the shows. When we left last time, we had just begun to touch on anxiety and depression, which I think are arguably flip sides for many of the same coin.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you feel anxious, you
Right.
feel depressed, they go together
Yeah, absolutely.
so often, right? So we were going to talk about that in this show, and Dr. Salerno has put together 10 strategies to defeat anxiety / depression. We'll probably get through a few of these this show, have more for the next. So Dr. Salerno, always good to see you, and I appreciate the time you spend with me on this.
Well, first of all, it's really good to be here. And secondly, as we've been doing these sessions together, I'm beginning to realize more and more that we have such an incredible, wonderful opportunity to assist people, to assist persons in our society who are making transitions from one world of life into another. Okay. And there are so many changes that they have to deal with that are incredibly important. And I think one of the things that we can really do that's beneficial is to help people realize that unfortunately, it isn't easy. Okay, they're going to have to work at this, but if they work at it, they're going to get good results.
Mm-hmm.
If they work at it, they're going to be able to achieve things that are so beneficial for them and their families that that's even difficult to put into words now. But just to give you a bit of an example, if you stop to think about all of the baby boomers who are now retiring, 11,000, 12,000 a day, okay? And they're stepping into this new world that's going to be very, very different from where they've been. And they're going to have long lifetimes ahead of them. The importance there is if they take care of themselves now, they'll have fruitful lives as they go on. If they don't get some of these skills developed in their lives now, later on, they will pay a high price by having to deal with assisted living care and nursing homes, and then the kind of pressure that puts on their families, their kids. All right, and so the kind of thing that we're talking about, putting in their hands skills and abilities that will enable them to really move forward into the future strong and healthy and vibrant is going to make all the difference in the world. So we've got a wonderful mission, a wonderful purpose, and a great task. So this afternoon, what I want to talk about is anxiety and depression. Depression now, according to the World Health Organization, is the number one issue that is most debilitating in our Western culture. It's risen to number one. A few years ago, it was two, I think, behind traffic deaths and something else. Okay, but now it's number one. So it is significant. It's salient. It's powerful. It's due to a number of factors. It's due to a increasingly changing socioeconomic factor that's going on in our society, psychological factors, which are important to be able to break down into their smaller component entities so that we can deal with them. And this afternoon, I want to talk about at least 10 different strategies that people can take a look at. And these are skills. They're discrimination skills. And by discrimination, I mean it's looking at how do I know whether I should do this or whether I should do that. And the first one that I take a look at is control. How do we know what we are in control of from what we're not in control of? Now, we got things going on. Let me just use my own personal life, all right? There are things that are going on in Frankfort, Kentucky. I live in Louisville, Kentucky. I have no control over. There are things that are going on downtown in our local a courthouse over which I have no control. And somehow we get caught up into thinking in one way or another, we should be doing something about all these things when in fact, the only real control we have is how we respond to things and where we are with the people that we're with and who we can influence in some direct or indirect manner based upon our connections with those people.
Right. So let me just kind of feed into that a little bit. My wife, for quite a while, has been on the news, right? She follows, Apple News, and it's just story after story. And it got to the point where I just had to say, honey, why are you getting involved with this? It's distressing to you. It makes you feel anxious. And I said, what can we do about it? And we can vote, certainly. We might have some influence, though very little, around on people around us and how they may think about issues. But at the end of the day, we're impotent unless we want to start a revolution or do something very, very grandiose. So my encouragement to her was look at what's going on in the news just the way you said it, right? Why get all depressed and anxious over things like that over which we have no control? Right.
And I think if we can make that discrimination, if we can discriminate between what I really truly can control from what I cannot control, it will take such a load off of our shoulders. Okay.
Right. In AA, of course, many meetings begin or end with the serenity prayer. And we've probably all heard it. It's grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change the things I can. And the hard part that I've not mastered is the wisdom to know the difference, right?
Yeah.
And that's super hard.
That's really super hard. But that's where we have to concentrate. Now, again, remember, we're talking about context. Some things we have the power to change. Other things we do not. What's the context?
Right.
If the context involves something that's going on with me right here and now, I can probably do something about that. Right. If the context is about Washington, D.C. and what's going on with our Congress or our executive political world, probably not.
Right. Well, let me throw this in. So one of the circumstances I have at home involves a co-member of the household who continually leaves the cushion or the stool portion of our couch in the upright position, right? Super annoys me. Now, I could change that, but it would be costly. There are many things we could change that are costly. I could make a bigger deal with my wife. I could directly confront the individual who commits this horrible act, and it's just absolutely terrible, as you can imagine. Drives me crazy. Of course, I'm being facetious there. I could unplug it. I could sever the cord, so I could control it, but at a great cost, right?
Exactly.
So even if we look at the narrow, or rather the broad band between what we absolutely cannot, what we absolutely can, there's a gray area where there's a cost involved. How do we decide whether the cost is worthy or not?
Okay, well, let me respond to that. All right. So every person who is married, I think, is going to be able to relate to this. Does your wife or your husband do things that drives you absolutely nuts? And of course, the answer is yes. Huh? So what do we do? So the issue there is the skill involved is compartmentalization. Do I need to compartmentalize this and realize this is just the way it is? This is never going to change. This is where my husband drops his clothes no matter what I do. All right. Versus, can I get him to make that change? And I think that the issue of compartmentalization, being able to compartmentalize some of these things so that not every one of them gets to us, so that we can say, okay, some of these I can just learn to live with, except because it really isn't going to make that much of a difference in my life. Right. Versus saying something about it. Now, we can say something about it. We can address it as long as you're willing to face the consequences. And that's the key. Are you willing to take the heat for what is likely to happen if you, in fact, address the issue about making that change in your circumstance? And if the answer is yes, okay,
All right.
then you take then you do. But I think the issue, the core issue there is compartmentalization.
Mm-hmm.
I
Say a little bit more about that. I mean, that's a term that sounds good, and I might leave here saying, all right, I'll compartmentalize that. But what does that mean in practical terms? How can someone think of that?
It means that you create a box in your mind that is separate from other stuff that's going on, so that you don't have this contaminating that. All right. I'm trying to think in terms of something that is that's something that may annoy you enormously. Maybe perhaps for whatever reasons, your wife always leaves her shoes, just drops them wherever. Okay. Now, let's say you've been married to her for 10, 15, well, how many years, whatever the case is. At some point, you may just simply say, this is who she is. I'll pick the shoes up and live with it. Or you may say, sweetheart, I love you dearly, but those shoes are just driving me nuts. Okay. Now, if I compartmentalize it, I put it in a little box, put it away, and I don't let it spill over into other stuff. And that's the value of compartmentalization. You can keep other stuff out from contaminating whatever it is that you're working with.
Right, right.
Does that make sense? I don't know.
Well, no, I think so. And sometimes I commingle that, and others may as well, with gratitude, right? Like for every time I go out there and I may see that the couch stool has been left up,
right.
I can just say, you know what?
You know what? Yeah.
A few years ago, I was thinking I would never get married again, never have a nice house, and lo and behold, I have all these things. Maybe at the end of the day, having to go down and push that button myself, Peter. It's very hard. It's a button, and you have to depress it for like 10 seconds. It's onerous. Ain't so bad.
Okay. And the question there is, how do you shrink the button?
Yeah.
Because some people have these buttons that are huge.
No, this is a small button. It's hard to find. I have to look down for it. It's a rough life, as you can tell. All right. So the first step in combating depression, anxiety is to discriminate well between uncontrollable things, what's going on in Washington,
Exactly.
and things we can control.
Right.
And then in that narrow band, say, well, I could control that, but then to discriminate whether the cost is worth
Do it.
paying.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we could change a lot, but it can be very expensive.
Exactly.
All right. Well, number two, all right, and maybe we're touching on this already, is the issue too risky? Now, when you say that, is the issue too risky? Are we still talking about things we could change, or what do you mean when you say, Joe, fight anxiety by asking whether it's too risky?
I don't ever want to put myself in any kind of a position for even a nanosecond, which would cause my wife to have a question about me. It's just too risky.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is I got this beautiful relationship with my wife. Okay. Now I can do with my wife things I cannot do with any other human being in this world. It doesn't matter who they are. I can walk up to my wife who's washing dishes at the sink, okay, turn around, hug her, tell her I love her, give her a kiss. I can't do that with any other human being in this world. You know what, Joe? I do not want to do anything in the world that would disrupt that, because if I put myself into a situation where I begin to bring questions upon myself because of how I'm behaving or acting, and I lose that, I will never get it back. Okay, that's too risky.
Right.
Right? Now, so what we're talking about here is, how do I assess risk? Do I put myself into situations that are risky? Do I keep myself out of those situations? Is this something that I am willing to put to step into, knowing that if I do this, there are going to be consequences, and the only one who's going to be responsible for facing up to those consequences is this person here?
All right. Well, let's tie that in to someone who's feeling, because this almost sounds like a prophylactic against anxiety and depression. For someone who is anxious and depressed, how can this question be brought to bear in their current situation?
Okay, well, let's take somebody who's very anxious. Okay, now, if they cannot discriminate between an imaginary threat from a real threat, they will treat the imaginary threat as if it is real.
Right.
Okay. So the issue there is, how do I discriminate between imaginary threats? And keep in mind, our minds are these little manufacturing factories. Okay. It's amazing how our minds can just manufacture all these fears and all these. It's amazing. Okay. Uh, then I'm likely to go through life most of the time just feeling anxious.
Mhm.
Now, do I have a lion standing behind me ready to attack me? That's a real threat.
Yeah.
Or am I imagining there's a lion standing behind me?
Right.
Okay. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at, wait a minute now, where's my imagination going here? Am I using my imagination effectively, or am I using it somehow to make my life more miserable?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I can imagine an awful
Right.
lot of fearful things, right?
Well, sure. So applying this step, it is risk evaluation.
Mhm.
And if I'm feeling anxious, maybe the key is to step back and say, all right, well, I have no control over this. If I did, I could change it, right? Because what we don't change, we choose. So if I've chosen it, or if I don't have a choice, then I have to evaluate perhaps, well, is this really a risk to me in
Mhm.
some way? Am I at risk, or am I merely confabulating a risk?
Mhm. Okay. So I saw this story about this person, okay, who did bungee jumping,
Mhm.
and the bungee broke.
Mhm. Never good. It's not good.
Okay.
Why I
I
don't
really want to take
bungee.
that risk. Okay. I mean, come on. We have to think these things through.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, keep in mind, you're never going to get a perfect answer.
Right.
All right. But you can do a pretty good job of assessing whether or not a situation. I'm really feeling down. I'm feeling miserable. I've been in this marriage now for 10 years and blah, 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 blah. And I'm tempted to step outside of it. Are you out of your mind?
Right.
Are you know, have what do you have any idea the kind of damage that's going to do to you, to those around you? Okay.
Mhm.
It's one of those it's really one of those areas that's not much said about, but man, I'll tell you, it's unbelievably risky. Okay.
Right.
How do I assess risk? Okay, maybe in that particular situation, I'm really that unhappy. I need to do something about it. Let me go to the therapist. Let me sit down and talk about this. If I need to get a divorce, okay, divorce may be the one of the worst things I could possibly think of, but it may in this situation be the best thing to do. Okay.
Right.
All right. So the question becomes one of, okay, how am I going to do this? Now, how am I going to, how, well, every day you get up, you got to deal with the resistance, right? You got to get out, go and do.
Mhm.
As soon as you start walking out on that street, there's danger.
Right.
Okay. And the truth of the matter is, it's important to understand that some risk in life is inevitable.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. Well, my wife's in the middle of planning a huge vacation for 13 family members. And I've seen her at the end of the day, kind of being the leader of this, really confront a lot of anxiety over it. And if I had been
Yeah.
thinking about this conversation then, I would say, well, what's the risk if you don't do it exactly perfectly? Well, the risk is minimal, right? I mean, we're mostly adults, and ultimately, whether people have a good time or not, it's on them. So the risk, I think, is exaggerated in her mind, this responsibility. I mean, you tell me if I'm thinking right or not, because really it's low risk. So when someone doesn't get to go on, a particular ride, they're still at Disney World for a week. For heaven's sake, they'll
Right.
live.
Right.
They're not going to be mad at her.
Right.
It's not going to end their lives.
Yeah. And so I think that one of the things we tend to do is worry all the time about what other people think.
Yeah. Yeah.
We start looking through their eyes to see who we are.
Right.
And you know what happens when we do that?
Hmm.
We go blind.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'll say that again. You keep on looking through the eyes of other people to see who you are. That's what's going to happen.
Right.
You're going to go blind. And you know what will happen next? You're going to sleep. And suddenly in the middle of the night, you're going to see this great big eye staring at you.
Yeah.
And it's the eye that you just killed that's come back to haunt you.
Yeah.
Okay. I know that's kind of weird metaphor,
No,
whatever the case might be.
no.
But if you keep on, but we have people who do that all the time. They keep on looking at themselves through other people's eyes. Now, there is a place for that. One of the ways in which I can tell more about who I am is by how you respond to me. If I do it all the time, and it becomes what's the word I want? Just so habitual.
Mhm.
Then
Yeah.
I run the risk.
It's really interesting how quickly we have evolved into a world and how relatively slowly we've evolved at an animal level, let's say. Because hundreds of thousands of years ago, being ostracized because of the perception of others of us, it could be lethal, right? If you were cast out of your
Yeah,
particular
right.
clan
Yeah.
and sent out into the wilderness alone, you were looking at a very grim circumstance. But society around us has evolved to the point where it's okay if some people don't like me. And I have, an entire world that, at least in, civilized, first world, second world countries, protects you. So the opinion of others is less consequential than perhaps our ancient Neanderthal DNA infused selves might perceive it to be.
I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right, John. It makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Well, we're moving through these pretty quickly.
We are? We've only got 8 more to go, all right?
All right, this will be a two-part show.
More to go.
All right. So, depression, anxiety, another question to ask facing these circumstances is this personal? What's personal? What's situational? Help me understand because I would think you would pair personal with impersonal, and you might perceive situational versus chronic, but you've put two things together I wouldn't have expected you
Okay.
to.
All right. So a couple of years ago, I love this, right? A couple of years ago, BP blows a valve in the Gulf. And there are these thousands of gallons of oil just contaminating the Gulf, right? And one of the things I always wondered, didn't anybody ever ask the question, what happens if that valve gets stuck? I mean, all those brilliant executives in BP, nobody ever asked the question, whatever happens if that valve gets stuck? A little valve down there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the effect of it was to overnight put thousands of fisherwomen out of business.
Mhm.
It was an event-driven circumstance that affected every single one of them in their livelihood, in their economic well-being, in their anxiety, in their fear as to what they were going to do the next day. Because they're going to fish. They're going to make a living.
Yeah.
Okay. So there is a perfect example of something that affects everybody personally, but is event-driven and is not personal.
Right.
Okay.
I
Now,
see.
so I think one of the ways to make that discrimination is say, now, wait a minute. Is this something where I have been personally attacked? Is somebody is blaming me for something that I haven't done?
Mhm.
That's holding me responsible for something that I am completely, truly innocent of? That's a whole different world,
Right.
right? So I think one of the ways to make that discrimination is between those two worlds. And there's a lot that goes on that we have to deal with that's personal, that we have to kind of sort our way through from situations that are event-driven over which we, again, come back to number one, have no control.
All right. I think I understand. So let's take it, with an older person, let's say older than I am, and they may be offended because their children don't come over a great deal. They don't see the grandkids as often as they would like. And it may be tempted to take that personally. My child doesn't love me. But in fact, they've got very busy lives. They've got soccer practice, PTA meetings. Both people are probably working, and it's situational. It's not a byproduct necessarily of a lack of affection for me. it's situational.
No, right. That's exactly.
Does that relate to our
Yeah,
audience in
it
some
does.
way?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's really important because, again, one of the things that I wanted to talk about here has to do with emotions.
Well, and we skipped
Feeling.
that, so that was going to be the next one I brought up. Should we trust our feelings? And my answer there is never, never trust your feelings.
One of the things I'd like to encourage people to do is to use their feelings to test out their thoughts.
Mhm.
So you get this gut feeling about XYZ. Okay.
Mhm.
And run it by your thinking. Ask yourself now, let me allow this feeling to inform this thought.
Mhm.
Now, as I think about this, do I need to be very, very careful about acting on the feeling? Because I have people who go right off of, and years and years and years I dealt with this, would go right off the edge of a cliff with their feelings. I'd say, no, 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 it's just a feeling. It'll come, it'll go. It's just an emotion.
Yeah.
Okay. So let your feelings inform your thoughts. Then, if that thought tests out to be realistic, and if that feeling, which for whatever reasons caused you to feel paranoid at the moment, turns out to be false, you haven't created a problem for yourself that didn't exist before you started the process.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. I've worked with you for a number of years, and one thing you used to say that I never got and which drove me crazy,
Sorry about that, Joe.
sorry, was it's just a feeling, right? It's just a feeling. And then finally I was able to analogize it like the lights on our dashboard, right? We're not robots. We don't have little error messages that come up and we know whether to do one thing with our computers or the next. We have feelings, and we have to take a look at that feeling and say, well, this is telling me that perhaps I'm doing something right. It's a positive feeling. It's a reward, that feeling. Or if something's wrong, well, the feeling is not the problem. I can ignore it if I like, but it's telling me something needs to be fixed. The way the little light is always on. I pick up my wife in the show so much, but the little light is always on when I get in her car because it's low on gas. I don't get upset by that. I just go put gas in it. So, is there some merit to just looking at our feelings not as things themselves,
Right.
but as indicators that something in our life may need our attention?
I think a really, truly helpful definition to use when you feel something is to put it in the terms of value.
Mhm.
All right. So this feeling is giving me an indicator of something. How do I value this, whatever it is that I'm looking at? So I get this feeling, right? I think at that point you can use the word value as efficiently as you would the word feeling. Now, if you begin to get this visceral change in your gut, now you've gone to emotion. That's different from feeling.
You're going to have to help me understand that.
Okay.
Because in my mind, emotions, feelings.
I know for most people, emotion and feelings are the same, but they're not.
Okay.
Feelings are values. Tell you what you value or you don't value.
Mhm.
Okay, I have a feeling about this. All right.
Mhm.
Do I value this or do I not?
Mhm.
Is that a value? Is that important for me or not? Now, if you get this visceral change in your gut,
Mhm.
okay, now you're looking at, wait a minute, fight, flight, run, stay, danger.
Mhm.
All the signals are up, the red flags are flying. All right.
Mhm.
I'm saying that if you get a visceral change in your stomach, you got to take a real close look at that one. And you may not have time to just simply ponder it.
Mhm.
Any feeling you can ponder for as long as you want to ponder it,
Right.
because it's a value.
Right. Okay. Well,
Am I making sense, Joe?
well, I'm not sure if I understand completely the difference between a value and a feeling. And to me, they seem to be on a continuum.
Well, but isn't a feeling more of a thought process, a thinking process, and isn't an emotion much more of a truly, how would you word it, physical process?
Well, let's go back to the person I was describing a minute ago,
Okay.
who is depressed because his or her children don't come to visit enough. So I would call that sadness, both an emotion and a feeling. The value is my children spend time with me and I'm an integral part of their lives. But the reaction, whether we call it a feeling or an emotion, seems to me to be a distinction. I can't perceive
Well,
it.
the emotion would be that she's sad,
Right. Okay.
or the emotion would be that she's angry.
Right.
Now, the feeling would be the value that she feels, experiences when the value that when those grandkids come over, okay, it creates an attitude in her part that is light, that's happy, that's joyful. Okay, joyful obvious is true joy is a feeling. I mean, emotion. I'm making a really what's the word I want? Detailed
Hmm.
depiction between these two worlds. Okay,
Hmm.
between because most people just go on their feelings and they're really going on their emotions and their feelings and for a lot of people that is a confusing world, but I think if we can kind of separate them to some degree
Right.
and give people definitions of how that might be different
Hmm.
and to ask them to be very, very careful about quote their feelings
Hmm.
because once again, as I shared with you for early on, feelings come and go.
Hmm.
All right. And they're highly unreliable. Okay? They're
Hmm.
not reliable, Joe. You got
Right.
to test them out.
Right.
All right.
Right. So if I may indulge my dashboard warning light metaphor,
Okay.
the person who feels sad because children aren't coming over enough, should they trust that feeling?
Yeah, I think that now. Okay, sure. Now that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So they have that feeling. Let them think about it. All right.
Hmm.
Objectively, can I trust that feeling? Yeah, I really, you know what? These kids are really important to me. They've always been important to me. I'm an important model in their lives. They rely on me to depend. I think that's a sound feeling.
Hmm. Gotcha. And what would be an example to put you on the spot of a feeling that we shouldn't necessarily trust?
Uh God, he's so handsome. He just says the right things. Yeah, he,
Hmm.
man, I tell you, I just feel so good being with him. All right,
Right.
you know, keep an eye on that one.
Yeah. Well, and perhaps to keep on that neglected parent, the feeling that might be trustworthy is loneliness, but if you can call it that, a feeling of rejection may not be
That's
trustworthy,
right. May not be.
because we're taking it personally in that
Uh-huh.
regard,
Uh-huh.
not
Not
situationally.
situationally.
Okay,
Exactly.
understood, understood. All right, and so we've covered four. Let's do one
All
more,
right.
and then come back and
Okay.
do the next five in our other show. And I love this one. Are your expectations realistic? Oh my gosh, we could do a whole hour on this one.
Okay, so if our listeners will do any kind of research into this area, they will find every study done indicates that expectations fulfilled are expectations that you will feel happy about.
Mhm.
If your spouse is meeting your expectations, you are going to be happy. Okay. Now, the question that you have to ask is, okay, when first of all, you have to sit down and talk with each other about what your expectations are. What do you expect of me?
Mhm.
Okay, so you recently married, you sit down at the table, and maybe you need to ask the question, okay, sweetheart, what do you expect of me? Here we are. We just got through our honeymoon. We're looking at a life together. What do you expect? And vice versa. Okay. It's amazing how many people don't sit down and answer that question. And then you can go to the next step. Is it realistic?
Mhm.
Is it realistic for you to think that I'm going to solve every problem you've got? Is it realistic for you to think that I'm never going to make a mistake? Is it realistic for you to think that somehow uh, there won't be times when I have difficulty making it through life too? All of those, that's getting those two pieces in place is incredibly important.
Mhm.
And if we can convince our listeners, particularly older folks, because they've been through a lot, they've had to deal with a lot in life, and they have a lot of experience, and so being able to test those experiences out and asking themselves the question, okay, am I being realistic at this point in my life, or am I expecting people to respond in ways that they are incapable of doing? All right. Am I expecting them to be something that they're not?
Right. Right.
A number of years ago, I had this couple that I worked with. He was an alcoholic. They had been to counselor after counselor after counselor. And I said to them, I said, I'm going to be your last counselor. I'm going to be the last one you see. And I looked at him and I said, and she was determined to save him. She was determined she was going to rescue him.
Mm.
Okay. And so I finally I looked at him and I said, his name happened to be Pete. Pete, talk to me. This is who you are, isn't it? I mean, you have no intention of. And he said, finally. He said, finally, somebody gets it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says, finally. It was kind of like, oh God, thank you. You've just liberated me.
Yeah.
And her response was obviously surprise, disappointment, whatever the case is. But you know what? She divorced him. And you know what? Several years later, she found a guy that she absolutely adores. They've been married ever since.
Mm-hmm. Right.
She let go.
Yeah. The Stoics have is one of the core 7 principles that are typically assigned to the philosophy. Premeditatio malorum. Contemplate the bad. And I fall into anxiety or depression when I don't think about what could go wrong. And maybe that's a quasi-accurate, I hope it is, explanation of what it is, right? What bad could happen? We have our expectations. And I know my wife, as she contemplates this Disney trip, has many of them. And but things are always going to go wrong. And we cannot have, I think, expectations that are untempered by the possibility for things going awry.
Mm-hmm.
And I try and
That's
do
exactly
that,
right. Yeah.
and
Sure.
as my wife and I got married in July of one year, and then in the June of the next, she was diagnosed with cancer.
Yeah.
And if I had not operated, I suppose, at least subliminally with an understanding that, it is in sickness
And or health.
right?
Right.
And in sickness and in health,
Mhm.
right? It's an and, it's not or, because
Right.
there is going to be sickness.
Exactly.
And I think we have to be that realistic all the time, right? My kids, when I get to be the age of this hypothetical parent I've been discussing, I am sure I am going to miss them and wish that they would come and see me more. But I have to know in advance there's a possibility
Right.
that may not happen.
Right.
And then by so doing, at least I'm not confronting the unpleasant surprise that would otherwise await me.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense to me, Joe.
Well, okay. Well, why don't we stop there? I think we've done
Sounds good.
5. We've talked about whether expectations are realistic.
Mhm.
Are we taking things personally, or is it situationally? It may have nothing to do with us. Should we trust our feelings? Are these matters too risky? And I guess maybe, I might think more about that, because that's, have I borne a risk that's too much, or am I about to do something that is too risky, and my depression and anxiety is really
Mhm.
a warning bell telling me to be careful. And then, of course, we started off with what I think is the most important one, and that is, can I control it or
Yeah,
not?
right. Mhm.
So, any final thoughts, sir?
Yeah, and that last one, let's do our best to put into the hands of people as much control as we possibly can. Let's help them realize that the utilization of appropriate control in their lives and feeling like their lives are in control is a good thing.
Yeah.
We want to support that.
Right, right. Agency.
Mhm.
Absolutely right. All right. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with part two of this discussion. We'll go into 5 more ways if you are confronting this next chapter of life, or if you're already in it, what can you do to combat anxiety and depression? It's such a critical
Mhm. Mhm.
issue. The book, Living Well After 65, Blowing Through the Stop Signs of Old Age. The author's right here, Dr. Peter Salerno Jr. Amazon, hard copy, Kindle, take your pick. Thanks.